Oh, he's pointing at me. Jimmy G is pointing at me. Okay. Every time I fill in on the show, it's kind of like, it's like riding a bike. You know, you start off, you pedal a little slowly, and then if you do it a second day, you're pedaling a little faster. And by the end of the week, you're a speedster. But the first day, always a little rough. But Jimmy G pointed at me. It's time for me to talk. Actually, it's time for us to get an update from CTV's political analyst, former advisor to Prime Minister Paul Martin, Scott Reid. This segment brought to you by Guaranteed Industries. Losing your cool? Call the pros at Guaranteed Industries for commercial, industrial, and residential air conditioning, keeping Montrealers cool since 1957. Guaranteed Industries at Canair Premier Dealer. Call 342-3400. Good afternoon, Scott.
Hey, how are you doing?
Very well. We're going to kick off talking about the G7 because we're just a matter of days away from it now. And there is chatter about a possible deal with U.S. President Donald Trump. What are you hearing?
Well, not much more than anybody else is hearing, which is that it looks like the Prime Minister is playing three-dimensional chess here because he's gathered world leaders, or he'll be gathering world leaders, of course, in Kananaskis. And it's not just the G7. There's some controversy, of course. He's invited quite a number of other world leaders, including Indian Prime Minister Modi. And all of this is happening, as you point out, in the backdrop of what appear to be intense, maybe intensifying trade talks behind the scenes between Canada and the United States. And we know that Trump has just brought some kind of trade framework together with the Chinese. So you sort of look at all of this and you go, this could be a really consequential 3, 4, 5 days. Like if Mark Carney is, on the brink of bringing Trump into Canada, but also landing a trade deal, and at the same time, the job of the G7 is to think about a world where we have to look past America because Donald Trump says he's going to withdraw in terms of funding security in Europe or trading with most of the European and other Western nations, including ourselves. So how does all of this stuff to come together? Will it come together like a neatly knitted fabric here for the big strategic thinker, Mark Carney? Or will it all fall to threads? And that's what I'm going to be watching for all weekend. Like, it feels really like two really interesting, gigantic files are coming together in the same place at the same time, and it's happening in Canada.
Let's switch our gears a little bit and talk about provincial politics. Jim Meny from the Gazette just a little while ago was talking to us about how the approval rating of our premier, head of the CAQ, Francois Legault, has fallen again. So he's the least popular premier in Canada now. So questions are being asked about his future. Questions are being asked about whether his party as a whole has reached a best before date. What is your take, Scott Reid, as to whether Francois Legault is thinking about his future, should be thinking about his future? Is he going to take the summer to decide his future? And can his party survive without him? What do you think?
Well, I think that's, in some ways, the most interesting question is the last one. But, if I was being honest about it, if I was a close friend of Francois Legault, if I was a close advisor, the doors were closed, the windows were drawn, I'd probably say to him, boss, it doesn't look very solid, and it may be time for Legault to go. And, you think about all the currents that are coming together. He's been in office quite a while, and we've seen now we're now moving into long time territory now that he's been behind in the polls and increasingly behind in the polls. The Péquistes are obviously looking stronger. The Liberals are electing a new leader in the next number of days. Looks like probably be Pablo Rodriguez. So then you sort of put all that together. Those are the kinds of things, sustained negative polls, a looming election campaign, a fresh meat leader, for one of the opposition parties. And Legault is of course going to say, don't be ridiculous. And his manner suggests that he probably isn't going to consider it, that he's not the kind of guy that's going to go out unless they carry him out on a board. But I think you have to be thinking about it if you're Francois Legault. You have to look at the situation and say, do I really want to go out a loser? Should I take the path now where I step down, give my party time to renew? And he has to be looking at the example, whether he bears little resemblance to him politically, but he has to look at the example of Justin Trudeau and say, there's a guy who didn't want to go. His own party forced him out. Might that happen to me? Or alternatively, there's a guy who did go eventually, whether he got pushed or not. And when he did, he proved that a government can actually renew itself with a reprise leader. But of course, this party's only ever had one leader. So how do you conceive of CAQ without Legault? All of these things are very interesting, but boy, oh boy, it doesn't look very promising for him, and it doesn't look like it's going to get better.
And that, for a lot of Anglophones listening to this, it's very worrisome, any destabilization in the CAQ, because it would probably benefit the Parti Québécois. The Parti Québécois has vowed to have a referendum soon after winning an election. So,
I 100% agree with you. I mean, you look at it and you say, if he leaves, does the CAQ, does it start to disintegrate? I mean, does it renew itself, or does it just sort of shrink? And if it shrinks, does that see like an instant 10, 12% of voters just slide to the Péquistes? And, because it's a coalition party. It's a coalition of, nationalists, some sovereigntists. It's obviously, there'd be some votes up for grabs there. And, maybe only Legault can hold them together. Or, maybe if Legault goes, they can step it up. But it feels to me like there's going to be a lot of cards played in this next year in Quebec, and Legault is the guy who's holding the biggest one.
Scott, I want to get a quick take from you on the Canada Post situation, because the Carney cabinet has decided it wants to force a union vote on the latest management offer at Canada Post, kind of doing an end run around the union executive and its negotiating team. Is this a wise idea? Is this a good call by the Carney government?
Sort of look at this in a couple of different ways. I think the Carney government's in unsafe territory forcing this vote, because I think even as they announced it, they said the obvious thing. To me, at least, it's smart political communication to say, this has been going on now for like a couple of years. This has been, we've had 2 rounds of threatened strikes. We had 2 rounds of threatened job action. We cannot seem to bring the 2 parties together. No amount of negotiation on the part of them has brought them together. An independent arbiter hasn't worked. We've got looming that, broader study of Canada Post and its prospects, which call for deep, fundamental change and possibly its extinction if change isn't implemented. So I think saying, guys, let's bring this question to the call. Have a vote. If the union rejects it, then I guess we'll have to deal with the mess that's left over. But let's not continue to do the same thing and pretend we're going to get a different result. This is not going anywhere fast. So I think they'll be on safe political ground there. But the larger question looms, which is, if those workers say, no, we're not taking a deal, this is the last stand of the OK Corral, man. And if you look at that report in terms of the prospects of Canada Post, then the government has a big headache file that it doesn't really want, given everything else on its plate. What do you do with Canada Post? It's an incredibly important instrument and institution uniting the country. It actually serves a really vital role in at least a ton of rural Canada, but it doesn't feel like it's feasible. So how do you so suddenly you got to fix that problem if you're Mark Carney, and that is not what he ran to be prime minister for. But this is what happens when you're prime minister. You get stuck with the files you want and the ones you don't.
Thank you for your perspective, Scott.
Thanks a lot. Have a great night.